Good evening. June 16th, 2025. America is aflame. From Portland to Los Angeles, large-scale No Kings protests have swept the nation following the D.C. military parade, turning violent in spots with confrontations, arrests, and cities under curfew. Meanwhile abroad, Israel's Operation Rising Lion continues into its fourth day. Airstrikes and drone attacks pounding over 100 sites across Iran, including nuclear facilities in Natanz, killing key generals and scientists. Tehran has answered with missile barrages striking deep into Israeli cities. Tonight on What If Tomorrow, we peel back the scenes of American unrest and Middle Eastern firestorms to ask, how fragile is the world? How close are we to tipping over? And what should we do to prepare? Welcome to the What If Tomorrow podcast. I'm Philip.
And I'm Mark.
And I totally screwed that up, didn't I?
I mean,
it's been a long day.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's been a long day. But yes, Enzo, things are popping off. We're going to break that down tonight. We're going to have some discussion. Figured it was a little more important than talking about the topic we were going to speak to, which is something along the lines of climate disasters and things like that. This is real world. This is not a what if scenario. Will we get into what if scenarios? I think so.
Oh yeah.
We're going to kind of war game it, kind of see what could happen, just through our discussion, your discussion in the chat. We're going to what if it, we're going to war game it, see what it's doing. Yep, China's calling on citizens to leave Israel immediately. I haven't heard that. I mean, it's changing right now. I mean, I had an outline ready to go. Then I just right before we got on, I got a new one with all the current information up to date right now, and I hadn't seen that yet. I don't think it's quite off the table for U.S. involvement, and I hope.
No, I don't think it's off the table
we
at
stay
all.
out of it. We don't need another 20-year war. I don't think it would last that long, but we don't need it. We'll get into more of that here shortly. We're just going to kind of look at what's going on across the U.S., what's going on with the escalation between Israel and Iran. But we're also going to sit there and look at this objectively. What can we do about it? What can we do to prepare for it? Let's see. Enzo just put up Fox News reports that President Trump has requested that the National Security Council be in the Situation Room when he arrives at the White House later tonight from the G7 summit in Canada. So stuff's real, guys. This is happening. Before we jump to Israel and Iran, let's talk about this whole. My computer's being stupid. Let's talk about this whole No Kings, quote unquote, protest. Well, it worked. We don't have any kings. So I think it worked.
Not since George.
Right. I'm being sarcastic. Everybody has a right to their own opinion, to voice it peacefully. But a lot of things I'm seeing isn't peaceful. And left and right, we're seeing the divide grow wider just from the outside looking in. And it's not a good thing, guys.
No.
We're seeing people protesting, sending illegal criminals back to where they came from. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. There may be some innocence in there. I'm not going to deny that at all. But the large majority of people being deported have a criminal history, and usually violent criminal history.
Yeah. I don't want them here.
No.
I don't want them in my jail.
they're taking up, like you said, jail space, taxpayer money. And all this is being used for, and you watch, or I did. I've been kind of in and out on Twitter all weekend. Hey, welcome everybody to the chat. We've got a good night tonight. Good, welcome. If you haven't been here before, sound off. I'd like to welcome you. But we're looking at that, or I was looking at Gavin Newsom. Everything that he was saying was basically contradicting everything he said 2 and 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is it? I mean, you're playing politics literally with people's lives. President Trump sent in up to 700 Marines. I think he sent in. I think only 200 there, and they're there to protect federal property. That does not fall in the scope of the Posse Comitatus Act. They can't be law enforcement agents on the street unless it's covered by, I want to say, the Insurrection Act. If that's the case, then they can enforce law. Nobody's called for the Insurrection Act to be, played out or whatever. However, words are failing me. I'm having a rough go tonight.
Words are hard, man.
They are, absolutely. I was having a rough go last time. Maybe we need to do this like 6 in the morning. That wouldn't work either, though.
No, that would not work either.
I don't even have my coffee then, so. But yeah, with the, everybody's up in arms. Well, the president doesn't have any authority to activate the National Guard. Yes, he does.
He actually does.
He absolutely does. And then
He's the commander-in-chief of the army, of which the National Guard is part.
Right. But we've also seen one person shot and killed in, was it Salt Lake City? They were shot and killed.
Yeah, and he was a bystander.
Right.
They were shooting at a guy who pulled a rifle, and the bystander got hit in the crossfire. So the rifleman is being charged with murder because someone died in the act of him committing a crime.
Yeah. Chris said so many peaceful protesters, quote unquote peaceful protesters, are saying that coming in illegally is not criminal but civil. Am I wrong in the word illegal meaning criminal? No, you're not wrong. That's
No.
Is that what's called circular logic?
I believe so. Yes.
I mean, you might be here and you may not be committing a crime, but if you came across the border illegally, you
did
have
to get
committed
here.
a crime.
Yes, a federal crime.
Anyway, yes, Enzo, we would have to change the name of the show to the What If Today podcast if we started doing it at 6 in the morning. That'd be like Good Morning America, wouldn't it? What if today?
What if I made sense?
Right. But I'm seeing videos of people being run over by cars and all this, and people are tired of this crap.
Yep.
People are tired of it. Plain and simple. We've all played this game before in 2020. People blocking the roads, the protesters, and all this crap. People are tired of it. They're starting to push back, and as they should.
The best thing okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The best description of this whole situation that I have seen, and I have quoted several times today, is if you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes.
Yeah.
They've been talking about doing the deportations for what, 20, 30 years now? But nobody's had the political will to actually do it. Well, and finally somebody's doing it after all these years of warning, and everybody is losing their mind.
Yep. Well, I can't remember exactly where I read it. I read that Obama deported 5 million illegals, but you didn't hear anything about it.
No, because he was the golden child.
Yeah, it's all politics. It's all politics. The left is losing their mind. And where's your ticker at, Mark? We might get a little political tonight.
Well, I'm going to try not to.
Right. But it seems like everything right now the left is trying, they're falling on their face because people are tired of the games. And they're realizing, and I read another place. Forgive me, I don't remember my source. I can't quote my source, but something along the lines: if all these people are deported out of California, they'll lose like 2 Senate seats and several electoral votes.
Right, and they absolutely do not want to lose their power.
Right. And that's what we've talked about for years now. I mean, it's all about power and money. That's all it's about. I've also seen where the administration is investigating who's funding all these riots or protests. I'll say protest, because in reality, most of the people that are out there are being peaceful in their in a protest.
This has actually been not too bad as far as the violence goes.
Right.
And there's been relatively little looting.
Yep.
But they're just getting started.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious because I'm hearing some places it kind of just fell on deaf ears, or it just people didn't show up and this and that. But other places, there's thousands of people there. And as long as you're being peaceful, have at it. That is your right. But anymore, it's hard to tell who's in the right and who's in the wrong, because most of the videos you see, there's no context. It's right at the moment of something happening. You don't know how it started. You don't, you can't trust the news media because it's always slanted one way or another. So what do you do? Where do you go for your information? Again, hey Jess.
There's my sister.
But where do you go for your information? That's why I go to like Twitter and I'll research. I'll find stuff and I'll research. And yeah, I mean, you can find all this stuff and you can find it both sides. The comment sections just infuriate me. And it shouldn't, but it does, because you hear the same story from both sides. Well, you're a libtard. Well, you're a repubtard or whatever. It's just throwing it back and forth. How about people have a civil conversation?
Well, see, that's exactly what the media does not want, Phil.
Right.
They're wanting to lead us around by the nose. They don't want to talk facts. They want to talk feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I want facts, dude.
Yeah.
You give me the facts, I'll make up my mind. I can make up my own opinion. I'm smart enough to do that. And so are most of Americans if they're given the chance.
Right.
But they just want to lead everybody around by the nose, and so many people are so ready. Both sides, I'm not trying to be political here, both sides just allow the media to lead them around by the nose. And honestly, if you want my true opinion, we need to bring back the old media rules where you had to give everybody equal time, because there is no attempt by either side, whatever news organization you want to follow, there's no attempt to just put out the facts.
Yeah. There's some independent
there's some.
They're like small scale, like news organizations. I would say news organization, but they're more like Twitter feeds and
bloggers,
Facebook bloggers and stuff like that. They're trying to put out real news without the slant on it. But again, they're few and far between. But the biggest thing, with everything popping off, as Enzo said, early on, you really got to pay attention to what's going on. You really have to. And we'll get into more on that here in a little bit when we get into talking about, okay, what do we need to do as individuals? Because really, we can't do anything about the We can't do anything about the protests. We can't do anything about what's going on Israel, Iran. We can't. There's nothing we can do about it. We can voice our opinion, and that's fine. But in reality, what can we do about it? Right. Absolutely right, Jeff. Yeah, Jess said she missed the old newscasters that dug up the truth on everybody. It didn't matter if you were left or right. Everyone was fair game. Right.
Absolutely correct.
Non-biased. Non-biased. Anyway, we'll move on. I really think this is probably more important. The ongoing situation over in the Middle East, Iran and Israel. Operation Rising Lion, what was it, Thursday night? Israel bombed nuclear sites, killed several high-ranking Iranian officials, generals, because they're
basically
threatened.
Decapitated their intelligence operation, if I recall correctly.
Right. Regardless of your view on it, I'm trying to think of how to put this. Regardless of your view on it, if they felt threatened, and I would ask our government to do the same, they have a right to defend themselves.
Absolutely.
Today, there's an interview I was listening to on The Blaze, and a guy made the comment, said, if you think about it, 60 days ago, President Trump told Iran, you have 60 days to come to the table and get this sorted out. On day 61, Israel attacked.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's something to think about. Israel's not going to stand by. They're a spit in the middle of the Middle East over there. They're a small country, and I'm going to get on my soapbox here for a second. But anti-Semitism is skyrocketing right now, and this was happening terrible. Before Thursday. This was happening. Amen, sir. Amen, George. He said, get ready to meet Jesus. I'm ready for his return. Amen, sir. I am too. But yeah, they have every right to defend themselves. Of course, Iran is, we're the victims and you attacked us unprovoked. Well, what about the Hamas and the Houthis and all that these guys are funding? They're the world's largest sponsor of terrorism.
Right. And not only are they a sponsor of terrorism, they've come out and said in so many words, when we get a nuke, we're going to use it on Israel.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. And now
we are going to do it.
I read this evening that, hold on here. I read this evening that Pakistan said if we use nukes, they're going to send nukes. They're going to launch nukes over Israel. So they're trying to get a coalition of Islamic nations to fight against Israel. That's happened before in 1968. What was it, the 6-Day War?
6-Day War.
That didn't end well for them, for any of them.
No, it really didn't.
But we'll just do a quick recap on the strikes. It kicked off, Thursday. Had 200 plus aircraft targeting nuclear, military, and Iranian Republican Guard sites, including Natanz, Tehran command centers. It killed dozens of top generals and scientists, just like we said. Iran, of course, committed a counterstrike. Said it launched over 350 missiles and drones. They were launched in a multi-day retaliation. I want to say only 20-some missiles hit. and a lot of the comments I'm seeing are, well, the Iron Dome's not working. Well, it's pretty good odds. I mean,
Yeah.
there's been 24 people killed in Israel. Unfortunately, I mean, kids, civilians, and that's the difference. I want you guys to understand this. The difference is when Israel struck, it was precision. They used precision munitions and struck
At military targets.
at military targets. And Iran is just launching missiles at Israel. Just
And
trying to get
most of the
something through.
casualties have been women and children.
Right. So it's just food for thought. Yeah, this says 24 Israeli civilians killed and 592 injured. And this is a way, I mean, I hate to say it like this, but this is a way of life in Israel. How often do you hear that, you have rockets being fired from the Golan Heights or something like that along the lines, or
All the time, ever since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm. Or the strike from Gaza. Was it almost
Right.
2 years ago, come October? They killed women and children. They were playing soccer with a baby. I mean, these people are savages. In Iran, they're saying 224 plus people are dead. Mass evacuations from Tehran. Hospitals and state TV damaged. I did see a video of one of the strikes, and it wiped out one of the TV stations. These people were had a show or something going on. I couldn't understand what they were saying. It could have been propaganda or whatever. But they hit, and you could see all the set falling around and stuff from just a concussion of the damage. I mean, it looked like the host or whatever was getting out of there, was able to get out of there, but the global response that we're seeing, they're sending out advisories from Germany, Great Britain, the G7 warns of a broader conflict. So, in all honesty, it stands to ask: is this the start of World War III? Because I think if we get involved, you're going to see China get involved. We're going to see China
Russia.
move on Taiwan. Russia's going to ramp things up, and I think they are. I'm not 100%
Because
sure
they
on
want the
that.
oil. The Russians flat out want the oil.
But
Well, so do the Chinese, for that matter.
right.
So,
Let's
it's a
just
bad
look
deal.
at what's that?
It's a bad deal.
It is. It is absolutely a bad thing.
And it could have been prevented.
Yeah.
When the Ayatollahs took over and we had the hostage situation back in the 80s and, 70s, Carter at that point should have intervened. Iran was our ally, and we chose to do nothing. And a free people, because make no mistake about it, the Iranians, being mostly of Persian descent, were a free people. They were just like Americans. The best doctors in the world came from Iran. And we allowed this brutal, backwards, warlike group to take over the country and basically enslave the people.
Yep.
But it was too close to the end of the Vietnam War, and nobody had the political will to defend our ally. It could have been prevented. All these deaths, all this warmongering, all these terrorist attacks, all of it could have been prevented.
Yeah, I'm going to share this video real quick. It's on X. That's what I seen earlier. Enzo said, from what he's observed, Israel's total air dominance over western Iran up to Tehran. Over the past weekend, we sent a lot of tanker support. I'm thinking we'll provide tanker support for all Iran. I can see that. I know we've got to have. We don't have boots on the ground per se, but I think we have a presence. I mean, it's just.
I know they're sending aircraft carriers.
Yeah. I'm also hearing, I haven't verified it, so just take it as it is. But I'm also hearing that China is sending 2 aircraft carriers to set off the coast of the U.S. in international waters. So something, if it's true, it's definitely something to watch, something to be aware of. I don't know if it's true, but again, I mean, look it up for yourself. I mean, I don't know 100%. I want to share this real quick. This is the video I was talking about. If I can get on there here. Yeah, here we go.
متجاوز به صدای حق و حقیقت است. آنچه که ملاحظه کردید صدایی که شنیدید فضای غبارآلوده استدیو
Yeah, so here we go. Yeah, so real things are definitely happening. I mean, I haven't seen anybody say, "Hey, oh, that's really not happening." I am seeing a lot of people saying, "Well, this could lead to a false flag. This could be something like that." So who knows? I mean, it absolutely could be. I mean, never let a good crisis go to waste.
Right. And we kind of let them do this. The Obama administration basically gave him free rein.
Yes.
So.
And something we haven't really touched on yet. We're going to kind of backtrack. I totally forgot about it until I saw it here. The 2 congressmen or the congresswoman and congressmen up in Minnesota, the guy killed. We know it's politically motivated, but nobody really truly knows. I mean, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of conspiracies, and if you're any friend of the show, if you've been around a while, you know that we like conspiracy theories and things like that. We talk about that stuff, but it's hard to say who this guy was. There's a lot of people saying, he was hired by Tim Walz, when he was governor, put on part of his staff. And this is distracting me. So, who knows? Regardless, 2 people lost their lives. Over politics. Again, that's more the divide. And, we're seeing a lot of, well, he was Republican or he voted for this and that. There's and again, this whole thing is fishy. Just like all the last several are just fishy. It's ridiculous. Anyway, back to where we were at. Enzo, he put up there providing tankers and AWAC support gets us around the troops on the ground visibility. Yeah, it does. I know I'd be willing to bet we've got special operations guys over there, along with the Mossad and all that, which I'm hearing they're on the ground in Iran. Everybody's pretty aware of what's going on over there, why it's happening, regardless of what you think or regardless of how you think about it. We need to look at what ramifications are we going to have here. If it escalates, I mean, we're looking, some people I've heard estimate around $120, $130 barrel oil. So they're talking maybe like $10 a gallon. Like in average, not like just in California, average. Where are we at here? I just kind of lost my place here.
I did see that it was in a surprising move. The price of oil actually fell.
I seen that too. I saw that too.
I don't know how
Something else.
long that'll last, but
Right. Especially if Iran takes over the Strait of Hormuz and shuts off the oil supply, it's going to skyrocket. I truly believe that.
yes.
But the big thing I want people here in the United States to think about is the number I'm hearing is around 8,000 active terrorists. Hamas, Hezbollah, all that are here in the United States. And before you say, well, they're all different groups or whatever, they're all coming together. You kind of have to pay attention to that because they're all coming together to make one big move.
Yep.
And I'm not trying to fear monger or anything like that. I'm just saying you need to pay attention because we all know that Iran is the world's largest state sponsor of terror. When are they going to pull the trigger, literally, and say, hey, start acting? Because they're already calling for it. They were calling for it before Israel hit. They're saying it's time to move. It's time to move. Nobody's safe, women, children, churches, and there's reports of men stopping outside of like religious schools and stuff like that, trying to get in. So it's time to really pay attention to what's going on around you. I mean, sure, we're in small town USA, but you should keep your guard up. You know, be alert, pay attention. It's like any type of preparedness situation. You need to be alert. You have to have your mind with you and about you, especially when you're going out. If you have kids, like I do, or if you're going to be around kids, pay attention. To me, that's the most important thing here. That's what we can do.
Yeah.
Like I said, we can't do any. Yeah, we can't do anything about what's going on. We can protect ourselves and try to protect the people around us. That's why we're here. It's our job as a whole to protect our loved ones, protect the people around us. That is the most important thing we can do. And be ready. If we get a cyber attack, something to think about, and I brought it up to Mark. Let me pull it up real quick. Just last week, and I don't know if anybody heard about this, and this was on ABC News. 2 Chinese nationals were charged with smuggling potential agroterrorism fungus into the U.S.
Yep.
And I think I've heard like 1 or 2 other cases of them trying to smuggle in biological stuff into the United States. So it's something to seriously watch for, be ready for. I mean, this was just for attacking our crops and stuff.
Let's see. And we've talked about this in the past about China trying to buy up our agricultural infrastructure and buy the companies that make our products. And so this is just part of that. If they can damage our food production, they control a lot of our food production now. Then they can do whatever they want with the price and basically make us beg.
Right.
You control the food, you control the people.
Oh, absolutely. But I think it's also motivated because a lot of states are trying to put into law to where they will not allow China to own land in their state.
Yeah.
So, and I think it may be a move on that end too.
Even again, some of the blue states.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're just wargaming. We're just wargaming. Enzo said, update, the Argentine embassy has urged its citizens in Israel to leave the country immediately through land border crossings with Egypt and Jordan. Did you see, that reminded me, this is kind of along the protest thing. Did you see where all the protesters arrived in Egypt and they confiscated their passports and beat all of them? Did you see that?
I did not see that.
Yes.
How did I not see that?
Yeah, they were with that Greta Thunberg or whatever her name is.
Oh, geez.
They were trying to support her. They were trying to go into Gaza, and the Egyptians stopped them and confiscated all of their passports and beat them, put them in jail. Yeah, I mean the world's going crazy right now. And it may seem like a lot of times Mark and I are like, hey, we're shouting from the rooftop and we're fear mongering, and we're really not.
We just want people to be aware.
Right. Be ready. Have a bug out bag. Have something set up for you and your kids.
Have a food
in case
stock.
you've got to go. In case you have to, bug in. If you have to stay in, make sure you have plenty of food, plenty of water. Because if this ramps up, what's to say our water supply is not going to get hit? What's to say our power grid isn't going to get hit or hacked or something like that? Because it's a huge possibility.
Yeah.
How many hacks do you hear coming from China or the Middle East or stuff
Russia.
like that? It's just food for thought. We're trying to. He said, breaking U.S. will not join Israel offensively in its military operation. And I agree with that. I think we need to stay out of it. I really do. And yes, I know Israel's our allies. But for one, I'm tired of war. I'm tired of losing our men and women. But two, they have not attacked us. They've threatened. Now, on that note, if we are attacked and it's proven, then yes, I say we go in. We go in.
We absolutely should, yes.
And then we get out. We don't stay there for 20 years.
No screwing
Go do
around
our
like
job.
we did in Vietnam.
Right, or Afghanistan, unfortunately. We go in, wipe them out, come home. Don't try to rebuild. Don't try to push our ideology on them. Go in, wipe them out. All right, you guys did this. Sure, innocents are going to be hurt. That's warfare. I hate to sound callous like that, but it's the truth. Jess, I agree. She says no country should be allowed to own land in the U.S. They can rent the buildings their consulates are in. 100% agree.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's things to think about. Understand that you are your priority. The government is not going to care about you, regardless of what side you're on. They're really not. And if you think law enforcement's going to come help you,
they got bigger
they're
fish
not.
to fry.
Right. Yeah, if you think if something happens, law enforcement's going to come to help you, they're not. You're not going to be the priority. Whether it be civil unrest, whether it be a terrorist attack, or whether it be a nuke, or I mean, again, we're speculating. Yeah, something. You got to be your own priority, you and yours. Again, that's the biggest thing is you have to take responsibility for yourself. And I know our listeners, they do. I mean, they do. I mean, if they didn't, they wouldn't be listening, for one, I don't think. But make sure you have enough food, you have enough water, you have your security locked on, you have your medical stuff locked on. So I was messing around with, and this is something I would like to incorporate here. I was thinking about doing it later, but I'm going to incorporate it here too. I was messing around with ChatGPT the other day, and I said, come up with an acronym for prepare, or come up with a good acronym for the segments, or whatever you want to call it, for preparedness. I'm trying to think outside the box, get some new stuff going, bring in some new ideas. And it was the word prepare. And I've got it written down. It's actually pretty cool the way it came up with. And P is for protection. That's your shelter. That's your Can be firearms, but that also comes down later. R's for resources, food, water, and like there. Let me pull this out real quick. If it'll load, yeah. Here we go. Yeah. R's for resources. You want to have your water. Thinking bug out bag wise, have something you can boil water in, filter water in, purification tablets, food on hand, whether it be freeze dried, canned, whatever, depending on your situation, from home or what have you. Ease your environment. If you, especially bugging out, you want to have a way to make shelter, a tarp or a poncho or a small tent or something like that. You want to have extra clothing on hand. Then the other P is personal aid, is first aid. Have all your meds on hand, your prescriptions. If you have kids, make sure you have child-specific medications, bandages, gauze, antiseptics, things like that. Then this is a big one, awareness and security for the A. Have your pepper spray, your concealed carry weapon or a weapon of some sort, good flashlights, personal alarms, cash in small bills. The most important is a situational awareness mindset. It's kind of what we've been saying. Pay attention. Keep your head on a swivel. Pay attention to what's going on around you. The other R is repair and tools. Have an everyday carry knife on hand in case you have to get out. You've got it. A good multi-tool, some fire starters, paracord, duct tape. Have flashlights, a headlamp, and a map and a compass. Learn how to use it. If you don't know how to use this stuff, learn how to use it. And now's the time to do it. And extras for the other E, all your extra stuff. If you go back and watch some of our first videos on how to build a bag, I had a little small collapsible fishing pole or a bandana for filtering or signaling or first aid, cooling, a USB drive with important documents, a printed ID and insurance copies, photos of your family in case you get separated. They're all great ideas. Let me get back here. This is just food for thought. And I thought it was a really cool acronym that came up.
Yeah.
It really kind of puts things in perspective, in place, kind of categorizes everything. So it makes it easier to look at, to remember. So for preparing, for one, you definitely want to have a bug out bag. And if you can't remember what all these stand for, the acronym prepare, if you can't remember what that stands for, send an email or whatever, and I'll send it out to you. I'll send you what it is. Actually, I think I have a PDF I can post or something like that to download, or I can put it on Facebook. That wouldn't be a bad place either.
Yeah, that's a good place.
So I'll put that up on Facebook so you guys can see it, and I'll pin it up at the top. Let's see where we're at here. For one thing, for civil readiness, with all the protests and riots going on, understand your curfews, especially if you're in an area that's curfewed or whatever. Understand that. Understand your rights during the protest. Have a communication plan for your family. 100%. Hopefully, if you have a family, you guys aren't in the protest.
Yeah.
Especially after dark. Because that's when all the bad crap seems to happen, is after dark. If you're going to be traveling for business abroad or U.S., make sure you're paying attention to the advisories and you get travel insurance, things like that. And some practical tips. Keep your essentials at home, like we're saying. Make your food, water, all that good stuff. Have some backup power, some way, somehow. Whether it be an electric power or electric generator, solar generator, or a gas generator. That's for sure, Enzo. Enzo said, with world shenanigans right now, I wouldn't hang out in large gatherings. No, absolutely not.
No, not right now.
You're asking for trouble. We've already kind of touched on this. This says follow reliable news sources, but what's reliable? We've already kind of been down this road. We've talked about that. What's reliable? It's kind of hard to be, sure, you need to know what's going on wherever you're going, especially if you're traveling. But in all honesty, I'd avoid any big city right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I've heard there was stuff going on in Tulsa, which isn't very far from us. I'm sure there was stuff in Wichita. I'm sure there was stuff in Kansas City. And that's just around us. I've heard a lot of stuff going on down in Dallas. In the big scheme of things, it's not that far away from us. It's like a 6-hour drive. Denver, there's some stuff going on out there, and that's like a 6-8 hour drive, something like that. So it's you need to be aware. The biggest thing is situational awareness. If you've got to go out, pay attention.
Stay home and utilize that Walmart delivery or whatever it is you have, and don't take any chances.
Right. Yeah, it's not worth taking a chance for.
It'll calm down, or it won't, but you should be ready.
Right. This is kind of short and sweet, but we'll get into this. I'm going to throw some scenarios at you guys. First scenario, we're talking just kind of everything as a whole. If it all coalesces and all becomes one big giant event, we remain divided here in the U.S.
That looks likely.
Congress is gridlocked, which is likely. The Middle East slips into a protracted war.
Let's hope not, but there's a pretty good shot.
Yeah, and this is all kind of a what-if thing, this is kind of a new segment. The second scenario, diplomacy prevails. Iran has some moderated restraint, which I don't see that. There's a ceasefire and U.S. mediation.
It's possible.
Scenario. Yeah, the third scenario is unintended escalation. There's a proxy engagement via Hezbollah, Houthis, or Houthi cyber attacks, which we've kind of touched on. What are your guys' predictions? I'd love to hear from you in the chat. If you're not watching, live, leave those, comment via email, comment on the Facebook group, or comment on the video. I'd love to see that if you're watching the video on YouTube. We'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are. What do you think is going to happen? We're just kind of what if and now. This is just trying to get a gauge a feel of where you guys are at.
My opinion is a mix of all these scenarios. I can see the U.S. remaining divided because our news media wants us to stay divided. Congress historically has problems with gridlock. I think that's going to be an on and off problem for the entire rest of the time we are a country.
Yeah.
The Middle East slipping into a protracted war. I'm going to give that a fairly high odds of 40%. I think there's a 40% chance that is going to, and it's been in a protracted war for the last few hundred years, but
right.
This particular, whatever you want to call it, I give it a 40% chance of going on for some time. However, I can also see diplomacy prevailing with U.S. mediation. I don't see a moderated Iranian or a restrained Iran. I see them being handled, not necessarily by force, but basically being put in timeout for a while, with whatever political means. I don't see them getting any better. Although I have heard whisperings of a lot of unrest in Iran. There has been unrest in Iran since the takeover, because people still remember being free. Though that generation is getting to be my generation, my age, but a lot of people still remember, and they've heard the stories of, back in my day, we could walk to the corner and not get shot.
Right.
We went to the beach, And then I do unfortunately see a lot of scenario C happening. I believe before it's all over, we're going to see some terror attacks.
I agree with you on that. I don't think there's going to be, a scenario C, or the third scenario is unintended escalation, which I don't see any unintended escalation. But I do see the proxy engagement, because that's just Iran.
That's how they've been doing business since the 70s.
Right. I do see that happening, whether it's here, whether it's in Israel, or wherever. Sylvia, you're in France, correct? I think he's in. I'm pretty sure he's in France. What's it like over there? What's the feel over there?
We'll give him some time to type.
Yeah.
So anyway, I see a combination of all of these scenarios.
With the first scenario, I'll give you my thoughts. With the first scenario, yes, we're going to be divided. That's the powers that be. They want us divided. Would I love to see us come together? Absolutely, I would. And I do think if there was an attack, 9/11 type, not necessarily the same type of attack, but on that scale, I think we would come together.
Yeah.
I think the chances, I'm not even going to talk about a gridlock Congress.
It's normal.
Yeah. But I can see the Middle East slipping into a protracted war. Because you have the Sunnis and the Shias in there, and I think they're all going to jockey for power. We know that Iran wants to be the superpower over there. They're also being backed by Russia and China. So I think they're going to be a proxy of Iran and China. And if we get involved, I truly believe that we're looking at a world war. Yeah, Sylvian said, and again, for if you're not watching, or if you're just listening, it said Sylvian is from France, and I asked him what the feeling is over. He said they're kind of watching a lot, I guess, but I think people are more aware that this is serious, and that's a good thing. I mean, we're seeing what's going on, and really he's closer to it than we are.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of protests and stuff in Europe too, if I understand. I haven't been paying a lot of attention to that, but
we work too much. It's hard to pay attention.
Right. And to be honest, I've checked out a little bit. I've kind of gotten away from consuming all that. You know, it's kind of going through. I kind of go through that once a year at least. You know, just kind of back away, see
It
what's
gets
going
depressing.
on. It does. It really does. I got other things I'm focusing on right now, but this came up and I was like, well, maybe I better pay attention, you know, and listen. And it always seems like something happens where, hey, I need to pay attention. And Sylvian said, yeah, there's a little bit of protest everywhere. And what are your thoughts? Not just you, Sylvian. I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts too. But just in the chat, what are your thoughts? Is this being, how do I want to say this? Is this a planned event worldwide? You know, is this something that, you know, you have your puppet masters pulling the strings trying to get this?
George Soros Foundation.
Right. The Soros Foundation, World Economic Forum. We're kind of getting into some conspiracy, but I'm not going to say it's a theory because there's so much evidence that speaks otherwise.
Right.
You know, I mean, I know one of the funders of all this No Kings protest or whatever is one of the Walmart heiresses. She's funding a lot of it. You know, and she's, from what I understand, involved with George. I'm not going to say romantically, but I know she's has some ties with the Soros and all that stuff.
Well, and there's a history of that. There were money trails from what was those the protests a few years ago that were everywhere. Anyway, there was ties to Soros there. They were staging bricks and other weapons of bricks and bottles and whatnot at the sites of these protests so that things could get violent.
Yeah. And there's reports of that happening with these protests as well. I don't know 100% if that's just somebody stirring stuff up or what. Enzo, he said the protests are certainly getting money and marching orders, but those sources oddly don't seem to have the money they used to. They don't. They sure don't. And there's a bunch of stuff on that too with the whole, man, I just lost my train of thought here. The whole USAID and stuff, all that, you know, money coming through there is being shut off. But anyway, I'll go back to my scenario, but I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts. The second scenario, diplomacy prevails, a moderated Iranian restraint, a ceasefire, and U.S. mediation. I kind of agree with you, Mark. I don't know that Iran is going to be moderated. You know, is going to be moderated.
Temporarily cowed is the best I think it's going to be.
I would agree, and that's going to be because of handlers. I think if that happens, it's going to be because the handlers don't want it to blow up.
I.e. the Russians and Chinese.
Right. I don't see us mediating a ceasefire. I don't see it happening. Just because, for one, Iran, you know, calls us the great Satan, you know, and they're totally against us, and they've been doing this whole nuclear program behind our backs or under our noses, or, you know, wink wink nod nod, depending on who's in office.
Yeah.
No, because they got a lot of money from us several years ago.
Yes, that's true.
You know, and scenarios, the third scenario, you know, scenario C, I've already kind of talked about it. I don't think there's going to be any unintended escalation, but I do believe there's going to be proxy engagement with the terrorist organization, the Houthis, the Hezbollah, Hamas.
They're all funded by Iran.
Right. I don't know. I'm curious to see how this is going to play out. And again, I would love, and I'll post these up on Facebook too, and pin it along with the prepare acronym. That way, you guys have that information. Because I when it came up with that, I was just like, man, that's really pretty cool. Really some good knowledge to think about on what to do with it. So I will post that up on the Facebook group or the What If Tomorrow media page, because we can't stream to the group anymore for some stupid reason, but that's Facebook for you. But yeah, I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts.
My hope is this will all blow over in the best way possible, but my fear is that it's going to be an utter shit show, and the reality is it's probably going to fall someplace in between.
I would agree with that. I really would. I mean, and there's something we didn't talk about, and it's just food for thought, but is this prophecy coming true? Biblical prophecy. If you go in there and go look it up, look at the Gog and Magog war. A lot of theologians think it's going to come from Iran and Russia and all that. I saw that, Enzo. I meant to message you about it. They're trying to sell a bunch of cars and stuff on Enzo's Facebook page.
You're going to have to start a new account, bub.
Yeah. What was it Ben and Joe come up with was the low interest Ford or whatever. And I did talk with Ben, and they want to come on, or I invited him to come on. We go to talk about aliens making contact and stuff for our show. So they said they'd probably be able to make it, which that's it's probably in July, I think. I did the math, or did looking at where we fall on the schedule.
Yeah.
There's conversations going on in the chat. Sorry, I'm laughing. Enzo said, "Screw Facebook, but said if it's so easy to steal my account, I don't want to go back." Did you get out there, Enzo? Enzo said the guys did a great job out at contacting the desert.
I don't think he wants to share.
Yeah, this is prepared in the show, but this ties more into it on the fringe. But Ben and Joe, I mean, they've been on the show several times. They kind of helped us out early on. And they're actually getting back in the podcast game too. They just had a couple come out here the last couple weeks, and been really good episodes. So go back and support those guys. They're kind of back doing the thing, but they've been so tied up. Oh, okay, gotcha. He said he didn't go this year, but he followed the shenanigans on X. Yeah, but they got to present their documentary, their Eric Mitchell documentary, out at Contact in the Desert.
Nice,
pretty awesome. I mean, they're doing big things, and I wish them nothing but success, man. I was talking to Ben about it. Was it last weekend before, something like that, or one evening I was out doing chores, and I tried to call him because we were having some website issues, and he's got that straightened out because Ben runs our website for us through Nito Creative, and just called to talk to him about it, and he said, "Man, I figured you're going to be calling pretty soon," and we kind of got to chatting a little bit about how things went with the documentary. He said they're actually, if they can't get it, I can't remember what he said, something along the lines, if they can't get it like on Amazon or something like that, they're going to reach out to Netflix and stuff like that, try to get it put up on Netflix. I'm excited for them. They're doing good things, man. It's pretty awesome. We kind of went off the rail, but
that's not unusual for us.
No, it's not. Absolutely not. But really tonight, I mean, I don't have a lot left. We've navigated America's, what's going on here in the United States. Talked about the missile attacks and the attacks in Israel and Iran. And all of this kind of ties in and realize, we look at the kind of the weaknesses of where the fault lines are.
Yeah.
And we want this out there so you guys can be informed, so you can stay safe, So we just kind of pay attention and ask the questions, what if tomorrow? What if this happens? Because the threat's real. Most of the time our shows are talking about speculation, what could happen if this happens. We're watching things play out live right now. Through the protests / riots and through what's going on in the Middle East right now. Real things could happen.
Yep. And we're not sure what.
Right.
Nobody is. That's the problem.
No. That's exactly the problem, but that's the whole purpose of the show too, is to bring awareness to things like these.
Worst case scenario.
And here we're watching real world things play out. We don't know what's going to happen, but we're hoping to give the listener or the viewer the tools that they need to get through. Because like I've said a couple times in the show tonight, there is nothing we can do about what's going on. Absolutely nothing.
We can complain, but it doesn't do any good.
Right. But if you want to be proactive instead of reactive, have a plan in place, have a bag, get your bag set up with your kids and all that. Have
Shelter,
a preparedness
water.
plan in place. Yep. And I will. I'll put that acronym up on the Facebook group, and then I'll post these little scenarios up there. I'd love to get your guys' input on the Facebook group. With that being said, I don't really have any more.
I don't either. But stop by our website. It's back up online.
Yep.
And look forward to some changes coming soon.
Yep.
To the website. As always, like, comment, and share on Facebook and YouTube. It helps get our content out to others and help us grow.
Right.
With that said, I don't have a lot else to go on. Buy us a coffee.
Yeah, buy us a coffee. We've got a link. We're kind of rehashing a bunch of stuff on the show, guys. If you're just catching us, or this has been first time you guys have been on live, we're trying to rehash some things, kind of trying to almost want to say rebrand. But we're kind of in a process of change to bring you guys better content, more organized content. I mean, that's a big word for us, so be patient. With that being with that being said, guys, we appreciate you guys hanging out in the chat. Love seeing you guys in the chat and interacting. For the listeners, thanks for listening. Thanks for giving us your time. Just thanks all the way around, guys. And we'll see you next episode.
Good night.